Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating, from the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day. Each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. God, yet another exciting show. In the first hour, we're going to have a good friend of the show, Robin Kelly, coming on talking about his new book, The Human Hologram. Wonder what that's all about. And in the second hour, and I think this is a very important topic we're going to be talking about with Robert Whitaker, the anatomy of an epidemic. And I don't want to give up too much juice about that, but it's definitely a show you want to listen to. And don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can go and find out about all the wonderful products and services that I offer, as well as the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you too can study to become a energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or medical intuitive. And please do stop by the justenergyradio.com website and sign up for our weekly newsletter. That'll keep you informed of all the excellent programming we have coming up. You can also check out our over 4 years of archives that are free to access. So today we're going to be talking to Robin Kelly, and let me tell you a little bit about him. Robin Kelly, MD, is an English-trained doctor whose medical practice has evolved to embrace Eastern and modern mind-body philosophies. According to Robin, the most common ingredient missing from modern prescriptions is the very soul of the individual seeking help. His focus is on integrating these holistic models into a contemporary environment, blending the best of the East with the best of the West. Patients are seen as true partners, and healing plans are devised, honoring each person's unique gifts. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Dr. Robin Kelly. Hey, Robin. Hi again.
How are you? Hi.
I'm doing great.
Yeah. I think this is why we need other forms of communication. You know, this is why our non-local communication that doesn't depend on time and space is so important because you can trust it.
Well, you know, there are people that are commenting that as we evolve, we will actually develop telepathic communication. I mean, I already know I have telepathic communication. Not something that I can, go, oh, well, it's 2 o'clock and I should, telepathically tune into Just Energy Radio right now.
No. No, I think that's the important thing. I think telepathic communication is very much, I see it between loved ones. I see it between mothers and daughters, particularly in my practice, and the telephone telepathy of just sort of thinking of somebody in the phone ringing. The link between it is often a loving bond that one has with somebody. And so that is on a totally other level, So a lot of, I suppose, what we're going to be talking about is how we live in this mechanical, what seems to be a mechanical material world, but how there are other realms and how those other realms are manifesting themselves now, and why they are important for our evolution.
Well, why? I'm just going to throw that back at you. Why are these new things? I mean, it's not new things we're developing. I think it's things that we've had but just have forgotten. But why do you see them as being important to where we're moving forward?
Well, one of the things I'm seeing every day is that our feelings, for instance, and what people go to doctors with, which we have called symptoms, are very much probably connections to these fields, if you like, fields of information. Basically, our body receives information. And therefore, if we listen to these feelings or get in touch with them, we're getting in touch with the truth. And if we trust them, we can reduce down our worry. So many things I'm a medical doctor, I'm a family doctor, and therefore I'm seeing people who are with all the modern conditions and the modern medical conditions and illnesses. Many of them come from a situation of worry and overload and stress. In other words, we've got so much information to process, and we also worry and blame ourselves and shame ourselves. All these, this internal dialogue drains us and drains our immune system. So, if we can trust this other level of communication, trust our feelings, trust our connections to the world. It's wonderful for our health, for a start. But it also, I suppose, makes us more joyful beings if we can live in the moment, basically outside time and space, which is basically the moment. We can notice we can be spontaneous, and we can notice all these synchronicities that happen, and they can sort of help us through the day. So, the big thing is I think it can reduce down our worry and give us much more hope for the future.
In my work as a medical intuitive, I find that people's bodies, their psyches, wherever you want to tie that, are always trying to have them be well. And it's always bringing up feelings or bringing up ideas of what they can do, but most people just choose to not listen to them.
Yeah, or to quieten it all down. And, it's okay probably to take an aspirin if you've got a headache, but first, just spend a moment thinking why you've got that headache. So in other words, what you're doing is you're honoring and you're listening to what the body's saying, because ultimately it's only got a few ways it can communicate to us, and that's by these particular feelings. And we've been sort of conditioned, I suppose, to saying, well, these feelings or symptoms are bad things that need to be quashed, and we've got so much into that we've missed we're missing our vital connections. After all, people come to me and to you, I suppose, with their feelings. They feel tired. They go to the doctor. They feel tired. They feel pain, whatever. That's the entry point to the doctor. So, we should spend a lot more time tuning in and listening to that and understanding that. And in fact, if you do listen, part of the symptoms will reduce down, because ultimately, if the body knows it's been listened to, it doesn't have to talk so much. It can quieten down as long as you take action, and it does mean change. It means if you're getting these symptoms, the body's saying, hey, wait a minute, you've just got to alter things a little bit, and if you do that, the symptoms will reduce down. If they don't, of course, we have to sort of investigate those a lot further.
I couldn't have said it any better. I find the exact same thing happens. I'll do a session with a person, and they leave and they feel better, one, because they get to voice what's going on with them and be heard by somebody, which sometimes doesn't happen. But they also leave with kind of more of an understanding of what's going on with them, and so they can be a little more proactive about doing something about it.
Give them skills and power, but you'll probably appreciate this as well. It happens even before that. It often happens that they will say, well, the moment I made that appointment, things improved. It must have happened to you as well, or on my way here, because all they've done is they've honored what's happening to them, okay? And by the time they come to see me, often things have started to improve anyway, because they have sort of at least honored and listened to it. And of course, I have people who are less inclined to probably just quieten all the symptoms down, take a pill, shut their body down. So I do have those people that tend to be sort of becoming much more aware about this as well. So it can happen. It happens as soon as you pick up the phone.
And see, you're a medical doctor, so people come to you with a different mindset. With me, they know that I'm going to tell them stuff. And so they usually cancel the appointment. It's like, no, I don't want to go there.
Well, that's true. I mean, the people. Look, I work in my own home on this level, but I do run also a more sort of a normal general practice. So I am seeing the person with streak, if you like, lots of people with different levels of awareness. But I think there is a trend, and I think that people can change. And often, I'll see somebody and they'll say, "Oh, look, you've got to see my husband because he needs this," And so I do see the guy comes in, and I see how people can change, and the penny can drop, and they can start tuning into what's happening to the body. And I tell you, this has got to be the future of health, because it's about people taking ownership and responsibility for their health and healing. And that's going to be massive in the future, because look at our health budgets. They're expanding, they're blowing out. And a lot of this is because people have become very sort of dependent on others for their health. Admittedly, you've got to seek help, obviously, for serious conditions, and there's no problem about that at all. And none of this is against the wonders of modern medicine. But it does mean people taking a lot more responsibility for their health now. And I tell you, when you do that, your life improves a lot.
But it seems like the medical profession, at least in the U.S., the AMA, they're trying to take people's power away, and they're trying to take people's choices away, and just kind of adding them to the machine and getting them on some kind of prescription thing.
Well, it is a problem, and I think it is. But although, when I have a lot of other doctors there, and they look at me and say, "Well, look, I can't. We're so busy that we can only spend 10 minutes with people." And I say, "Look, you can change things. You can decide tomorrow that you're going to sit down and listen to people, but that does mean you're going to see less people, and it does mean your bank balances maybe go down a bit, and." But ultimately, you're going to be much more joyful, and you're going to be able to carry on for longer. So there's a lot of unhappiness certainly in doctors who are sort of so busy that they feel they can't do this. So I think part of it is a power thing, but part of it is that there's a whole system is like a juggernaut, and everybody's trapped in it. I don't think they necessarily feel powerful in it. I think they're trapped, and also basically we've all got to look at how our beliefs have been formed about health, particularly in our early years. When we go to the doctor as a young child, we are somebody else is taking over and taking control. So I think our beliefs have to be challenged as doctors as well. We have to be challenged, and all these changes that made. Ultimately will make us a lot happier. Even doctors should be happier as well. But we have to look at this very seriously, because the system, I believe, isn't coping.
Mhm. See, I guess I should feel lucky. Growing up, your arm had to be dangling by like 2 little pieces of skin before they took you to the doctor. It's like, well, I guess you're bleeding on the floor. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's what happens in medical families, of course. The family, we all ignore our families. They have to get other doctors. Nobody's interested at after 6 o'clock, in the evening.
Oops. Let's kind of transition to your new book, The Human Hologram.
Yeah.
Is what we see and what we feel and what we experience around us real, or is it an illusion?
Yeah.
Are we illusions?
Exactly. And to go back a little bit, when I started to do Chinese medicine and combine it with my Western medicine, I became intrigued by certain things, particularly ear acupuncture. Well, basically, if in Chinese medicine and the French have developed this even further. There's a whole model of the ear, a microsystem, a whole body model of the body rather, on the outside part of the ear. And I found that if I stuck a pin in the top part of the ear, somebody's back pain would instantly disappear, and in the bottom part of the ear near the lobe, the neck pain would improve. So I followed this map, and I thought, well, this is terribly interesting. This seems to be that all the information of the body seems to be stored in the smallest part. And Chinese medicine, when you assess somebody, a Chinese physician assesses you, they will check your pulse, but they won't just check that the heart is beating at a certain rate. They'll be checking it in different areas. They'll be getting a whole picture of the whole body in a very, very small part. And the same as when you look at the tongue, you'll get an instant readout of the whole body. In other words, what we're getting there is what is described in holographic science of all the information being stored in all the smallest part. And in fact, one of the tenets of Chinese medicine is as above, so below. In other words, everything in the universe, all the information can be either stored or accessed by our whole body. So that was the first thing that drove me to sort of thinking, well, this is interesting. Maybe we do live in a holographic universe. Now, in the last 10 years, science has been buzzing about this because the numbers seem to add up. It seems to be that it is perfectly possible that we live. The whole universe is a matrix, basically, of interfering connecting beams of information, a field, if you like. And it's through our observation, through our senses and our awareness that we convert this down into the so-called reality that we see around us, these 3 and 4 dimensions. And that it, in fact, it is through our vision, our senses, our hearing, our touch, that we create this possible illusion or virtual reality in which we live. And I suppose the book, basically, The Healing Hologram, is saying, okay, so say this is the case. Is this important for us to know, or is it just way too much information? Is this something that will just freak us out and sort of distract us from our daily lives, or actually are we developing awareness of this for a very important reason? And that's really what I'm talking about. And how is this going to affect our daily lives, and what does it mean for our daily lives? And that's the focus of the book.
I mean, I'm still waiting. They talk about how we're patterns of energy and we're made of light. And, one of the questions that I get asked when I make that comment, and actually I had Fred Allen Wolf on the show and I asked him this question, which I guess he wasn't really amused, was, well, then how come we can't walk through walls if we're just light?
Yeah. Well, interesting, when I sort of writing this book, and you learn a lot when you write, and you write about what you know, but you sometimes write about what you don't know, so you find out about it along the way. I went to, and I became immersed in these other dimensions and validated them in many ways, but I sort of fell more and more in love with these dimensions. I looked around and I thought, hey, this is the miracle. It's the miracle, the beauty of this world, the diversity of the world, the fact that we're all sort of unique in this world and that we can all work on this plane is amazing. And it struck me that people who have, say, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, they begin to appreciate that there's a level of consciousness outside our physical world and outside our body. But when they call back, they actually fall in love with this place and want to preserve it and conserve it and actually want to live. And so I think that the reason we're here is to move consciousness along, and the reason we can do it through our actions, and not just by meditating and sitting down and thinking wonderful thoughts and writing beautiful things. It's actually getting off our bottoms and basically helping others and doing good things, because and that is the way that we're shifting consciousness. So basically it's our movements and our actions and our deeds in this life, if you like, that are so important in getting the process going. So I don't think we need to walk through walls. We need to honor these dimensions, but know there's more besides.
Well, you mentioned, now twice, these other dimensions. What are we talking about here?
Well, when writing this book, I mean, when I wrote the human antenna, it still seems to suggest that here we are like an antenna picking up information from outside, whereas the holographic thing is that it's all happening all at once. We are the universe. The universe is within us, and the universe is without us. It's actually words themselves, linear words, don't describe it terribly well, and that's why we all sort of struggle. I think we can pick this up far more from beautiful music and poetry. It's almost the gap between words, isn't it, that becomes important. I think when we talk about other dimensions and say that there's 4, 5, 6, 7 multiple, we're also almost losing the plot, because really what we're saying is that the laws of this 3- and 4-dimensional universe are only part of the story, that we're actually got a whole other set of laws that we're collapsing down from. So therefore, we're talking about dimensions that are beyond time and space. So it's not. So you can't even bother to count them, because there's an infinitesimal realm out there, and that's why I think we can call this the interconnecting field. Whether you want to talk about 0-point energy or vacuum energy or whatever, we're talking about our beings here being subsequent and collapsing down from an infinitesimal source, which we can call the great field or the unifying field, the connecting glue, if you like, that I suppose the physicists are talking about as well.
So is there evidence to support this theory?
I suppose I go through the first part of the book by going through the scientific evidence that seems to be accumulating that there are what some people would say there is a quantum reality. There's the science of the hologram which has been developed over the last 30, 40 years. In fact, ever since sort of laser beams have been produced. But there's also the exciting work of the last, say, even the last 5 years that have shown that quantum processes, which we're talking about, which are these other realms, are present not only in the laboratory, but between photons and, in these particular sort of odd conditions, like what they call 0-point energy, which is absolute zero in here. But they actually are being shown now to occur in living processes. For instance, photosynthesis in leaves is shown now to depend on a quantum process. In other words, a collapsing down of these other realms. And that is being shown to occur in the last year at the temperatures that we all live in, and that's terribly important. Our sense of smell, for instance, there's evidence that our smell, as we smell things, the quantum process is involved. And I think probably your work as an intuitive, you may well encounter people who talk a lot about their awareness of smell. If we smell something, we can instantly connect often to something in our childhood. The chalk in our school days, for instance, or Mama's apple pie. We seem to connect out time and space. And also they've discovered these quantum processes at the back of the eyes of migrating birds and other animals as well. So what the evidence is beginning to accumulate in the last few years that this is I suppose a basic fundamental part of what it is to be alive. And that's changed the game a lot. Now, there's other evidence, and you start adding it all up, and you say, hey, we've got enough here to say this is a rarity. This isn't just something. This is just not some oddity that occurs in the laboratory, or as entanglement, for instance, was thought to be a spooky action at a distance by Einstein. He thought, well, this is just a weird anomaly that occurs in the laboratory. The evidence is mounting that in fact, no, there are these connections that are outside time and space, if you like, that are fundamental to our being. It's all happening.
But see, that's very exciting. I mean, between the work that I look at it very personally. With the work that I do, and there are the naysayers, and then I do the ghost thing, and there are the naysayers, and I look at, people that are mediums. I'm not a medium, or acupuncture, which I have a question about that and how that fits in with this. It's giving that credence. It's creating the science to support the work that people do and have been doing for a really long time. So kind of shifting to the concept of acupuncture, and I'm sure everybody that's listening is familiar with the concept of acupuncture, and that there are the meridians that flow through the body, but the meridians are obviously invisible, and they have done testing, scientific testing in the laboratory that show that if you inject radioactive something into a meridian, they can actually watch it flow through the body. Do you think that things like the meridians are actually living in a different dimensional plane and are tied to this holographic world that we live in?
Well, yes, it's terribly interesting. I mean, there's actually a lot of new work being done on the meridians, and it would seem to be that there's a tie between the meridians and our connective tissue, what we call the cytoskeleton. And that's something, as doctors, we just haven't studied. In other words, we have a web that runs through us that holds everything together. It's the connective tissue that binds our tissue together. But it's also known that this connective tissue has electrical properties, semiconductive properties. And it would appear to be that if we can see this as a tree that's extending through the body, with the branches and the trunks being the meridians, the twigs go into every cell of the body. Okay? In fact, 70% of every cell that we have is this connective tissue, this cytoskeleton, this connective web. And at the tips of this web, there are what we call the spindles and the microtubules. If you've ever seen, and most of the listeners will have seen a cell dividing. You've seen one cell divide into two. And I don't know about you, but I've always asked myself, well, that's amazing, but what's doing that? What's pulling that apart? Okay? Mm-hmm. So the very spindles that pull the nucleus apart are the end, are the twigs to the cytoskeleton. And also, if we go into our brain, the very end parts of the cytoskeleton are what we call the microtubules. Now, the evidence is mounting. There's a whole new specialty called neuroquantology, which shows that suggests that these microtubules are the foundries, are the very places where the quantum world collapses down into our physical world of awareness. Now, in the brain, these cells don't divide. That's why, to the same extent as they do for the rest of the body. So they're busy. So the connections that we're talking about, the cytoskeleton, go right to where all our cells divide. In other words, which are constantly dividing and forming. Whereas in the brain, they're actually these foundries of our awareness, and all the microtubules. And now that is a lot of evidence now mounting up from that, and the work is being done by Stuart Hameroff at Tucson, at the University of Arizona there. And the biologists and the doctors are combining with mathematicians to show that this is very feasible. So there we're So when you're touching, so go back to acupuncture, when you're tapping into these meridians, you're tapping into an electrical grid, but the tips of these are connected by, this is how the theory goes anyway, into these quantum realms, or these infinitesimal realms of information, where it seems that a possibility, and I'm saying that at the moment because this is such an exciting emerging field, and there will be people who dispute this, but this is the way it seems to be going, this is where we're connecting to this universal field or matrix or universal wisdom, an akashic field, whatever anybody says. There are many different types of descriptions of this. So that's really what we're doing, not only just with acupuncture, but every time we sort of hold somebody's hand or give somebody a hug or massage them or whatever. Whenever we are connected and beings of connective tissue.
Well, I think that whole science, quantum physics for medical, kind of hard to wrap your mind around just that concept. But I think it is excellent and vital that they just keep moving forward with it, because I think, spiritual texts that we already have and have already read will actually make more sense to them.
Well, it will, and this whole work is, as you all know, I have found big differences or big changes that I've had to make in my practice when I'm doing this work. And one of the things is you have to let go of outcome. You have to take your ego out of it. I mean, we all, and that ego could even mean, I want this person to get better. I want this person to get better by next Tuesday, you have to let go of those other levels, I suppose more material levels of time and space, and just front up with good intent and hope. And so this is something that I suppose all people in the healing arts are learning, that you need to be there with somebody, you need to be there supportive and compassionate, but those other, I suppose, more human wishes have to be somehow put aside a little bit while you're at this work. And maybe you experience that as well as an intuitive. You have to almost let go of an outcome, and that's what's so difficult for a lot of people in this work.
And I think for me, it's recognizing that I'm just, and I'm going to say, the vessel. And I'm the one who is using my intention to affect something, but it's really not in my control. No. I'm just the tool. I'm not the person making it happen.
And all you're doing when you're doing acupuncture, which is something I've done for 30 years now, I've come to regard that as I'm just creating an environment of peace and connectivity, because these are little antennae that are, they're sticking out of you that are connecting you to these realms. It's up to me to be in this calm, supportive state, so this person isn't in fear and blocking out all this, because one of the reasons is that we haven't connected in the last few years so much to this is that the amount of fear that's around, that if we're in this fearful fight or flight mode, we have to physiologically cut some of this stuff out, because we have to do the job in hand. But to heal, we need to be in this other mode, this more receptive, peaceful mode, and that's when the messages come through.
Very much so. I was just looking at the clock. We got about 14 minutes here. So let's go on to this. How does knowing all of this information change how we interact with the world around us? Do we, like the law of attraction, I'm just going to throw that out there, has become very popular. And not that I want to get into a whole conversation about the law of attraction, but does recognizing that we're in a holographic universe support things like that? Does it support us using our intention to affect the world around us, etc.?
Yeah, but I think it's not about manipulating the world as well. And I think the law of attraction works on this other level, and I think it works through on a compassionate level as well. Basically, if you help people during the day, at the end of the day, you sit down and your health is better as well. We know that. We know that people that are service to others, and it doesn't have to be in the healing professions, actually live longer and more healthier and more productive lives. So, in other words, you attract back into you what you've given out. So, therefore, it does come down to compassion and love and intent. But it doesn't to me, it isn't so much that I get that parking space, because if I get that parking space, somebody else doesn't, So this is beyond that more competitive realm. So I think that's it. I'm
okay with that, though.
Well, I think if there's, I think if you're meant to get that parking space, but if you're going to rob the bank, you may not get the parking space,
Right. Well, I mean, in Gary,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
In Gary Zukov, well, I think it was Seed of the Soul.
Yeah.
He had the line, and this just really made an impression on me. Your actions are a reflection of your intentions.
Yeah.
And so, if you act badly, it's because your intentions were bad or negative or not coming from a healthy place. What do you think of that whole thought, that whole concept?
Well, I think so, and but I also, see people who act badly. Eventually, it doesn't make them happier. It makes them, and ultimately, anger to the outside world is often a reflection to anger within about oneself. And I suppose, one of the most important aspects of my work is to look at our conditioning in childhood, and particularly our beliefs. There's a huge amount of evidence now that shows that even when we're in the womb as babies, if there's tension outside in between our parents, that reflects on how we respond to tense times later on in our own life. And there's also evidence that adverse experiences in childhood, even abandonment, or specifically abandonment, will affect the illnesses we get in later on. So, in other words, feelings, feelings like abandonment reflect in our physical changes later on in life. And this is where they come to me in these states. So what we do is look at these feelings and allow ourselves to change, our perception to change, our beliefs to change. And if that happens, the health will improve, the person's health will improve. And it'd be lovely to feel that we can begin to reverse illnesses this way. So much is how we're conditioned as a child. And those involved in the healing arts, basically, and I write about this in the middle part of the book, we act like parents. In other words, people come to us saying help like a small child, and we do help them, we rescue them maybe. But the most important step is the next step, is when we allow them to take charge of their lives and to have compassion for themselves, because like a parent does. The parent loves the child so that the child eventually has developed self-compassion. And then we put our heads together to work out how we're going to sort of use this in the world. So, the healing paradigm is one of acting like a new parent, allowing this person to get to the next step. And the next step is often one of self-compassion, a happiness within. And then there's no need to be so angry out to other people around, to be a pain in the neck, as people say down here.
And I'm really glad to hear you bring up the whole concept of early childhood traumas and issues. There are a lot of people that will say, it's the stress in your life or whatever, and or you start talking about something and people are like, well, my life is good, or this happened to me last week. And what I find working with my clients is that, well, when you were 8, you know, you experienced this kind of an emotional energy, you know, or when you were 3, or, you know, or a divorce, but usually, you know, there's more than 10 years between the point of, and I'm going to say trauma, and the manifestation of a physical illness. And that's the part I believe that has to be healed.
Well, you know, yes, and we're all in a state of post-traumatic stress for one reason or another, you know, and but, you know, the person who may have felt abandoned as a child, of course, you don't rationalize it. You just feel empty and abandoned. If sort of 40 years later something happens, your partner disappears, dies, runs away, or whatever, you will feel that feeling again. It's almost like an allergy, you know, that has kept within you, and your body will react. So if I have found that by going right back into early childhood and talking about this to somebody, they get it, and we can start using exercises through our awareness to understand this and not be a victim to it, but actually change things around. And you know, it's the aha moment that people get that seems to be so empowering. And I, you know, as well, along with acupuncture, I use energy psychology techniques and tapping on certain places and just putting one's hands on one's heart and say things like, even though, you know, I felt abandoned as a child and I do now, I really accept and respect and have compassion for myself and love myself. Those just saying those words back to oneself seems to have a huge effect on the person gaining a deep understanding of what's happening to them. It's the ultimate self-healing technique, I think.
I'll agree. So let's say there's people listening in the audience that have stuff going on with them physically. I mean, I believe that when we have emotional upsets, or we're feeling lonely, or we're feeling sad, or we're not feeling at peace with ourselves, you know, we're not living in bliss, you know, that is an indicator, all right, maybe not bliss, you know, but that's an indicator that there is something going on that really needs to be addressed within ourselves. Any thoughts of a first step that people can take to start bringing about some healing in their lives?
Yes, I think, I mean, it very much depends on how unwell they are as well, because I think that for some people it's terribly important to get, I mean, for everybody it's important to get good medical help, because I think if one is also worried that one could have a serious medical condition, that's another worry that needs to be sorted out. And many people go to the doctor not to be diagnosed, to be undiagnosed, to make sure they haven't got this, that, and the other. So that's an important step, and this work can't be done probably until that happens. Having said that, I think that there's much to be done, and I think, you know, people listening to this, if they can look back, if they're unwell at the moment and any of this resonates with them, if they can look back to their own childhood and see if there are any pivotal points where they may have had a shock, or they may have felt abandoned, or maybe even asked to become a different sort of person. There are some people who have been pressured into becoming the people they're feeling they're not. If any of that resonates, then I think that they could seek help from the right people. There are many very good sort of counselors and practitioners, unfortunately very few doctors who are doing this work. But I think they should find help for that as well, because if there are major major traumas that they've had, and they'd actually have to be major traumas to others, they're actually how you feel about them that's important, then they can be helped, and the memory of those can be eliminated. Now, it's important, it's not a matter of going back and analyzing this. It's a matter of dismissing these negative beliefs and thoughts so that we can reduce down blame and shame, and you reach a point of peace and compassion to yourself. And I think probably my main message is, yes, it is totally possible, and you deserve it. Everybody deserves to live in joy, and that's really why we're here. It's actually to be joyful and happy, and when we're in that mode, we are far more helpful to others.
And ourselves.
Mostly ourselves. We've got to have we can't be that compassionate to others without being compassionate to ourselves.
And for the listeners, if you think you've gotten over it, like that divorce or the breakup or the red bike that you wanted when you were 6 years old that you didn't get, you're not. More than likely, you're not. You probably just threw it over your shoulder somewhere, and it's just sitting back there waiting to come to the surface.
A simple thing I ask people is just 5 minutes before they go to sleep at night, just put both hands over their heart and just breathe gently to the tummy, and just say, look, I'm all right, and wish themselves well. Okay, it's like a wee prayer for themselves. But if you put your hands over your heart and say, look, say you're tired or you've got pain. Say, even though I have this pain, I really love and accept myself, and I deserve a good life of joy. Do that every night. Okay, we pray for yourself. See what happens.
I like
that. We brush our teeth, so we might as well brush our soul.
But that's also having you kind of check in and connect in with your soul, so that you can get its messages.
It is so simple. I mean, what we need to do, the exercises that I talk about, are so simple because they have to be simple because the lives are so complex. You can't fight complexity with more complexity. You want something terribly simple, and it's just that intent that's behind that, saying turn your attention to yourself, put your hands over your heart, and just for a few moments, and see what happens.
I would be curious to find out what happens. So if we have any miracle stories, please do send an email. Go to the Just Energy Radio website and let us know, because that would be very cool to find out. Robin, we have 1 minute. Your book, I know you're in New Zealand. Your book is available in the U.S.?
Yeah, I've got my publisher's in California, and it's on Amazon, and it's on my website, but, and it'll hopefully be in Barnes & Noble and all the bookstores that are still going, still open.
That are still alive.
And, I'm very contactable through my website as well. I love getting feedback. This is how this awareness grows, and I've got the Human Hologram has a Facebook page as well, which I want people to contribute to because I want to learn from them. So I think we all need to learn from each other. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, Robin, the music's about to come up. Thank you so much for coming on and being patient and calling into the show and all that good stuff that has happened today.
Yeah.
And
my website is drrobinkelly.com. drrobinkelly.com.
Oh, you have a new one. I'll have to update
my
website.
It's also .co.nz, but people get confused with that. So if you put drrobinkelly.com, you'll get through to me.
Perfect. Much, much easier.
.com. That's the way.
All right, Robin. Thanks again for coming on, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
It definitely worked, didn't it?
Okay. Have a great one. All right, bye.
See ya.
And we'll be back with Robert Whitaker after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.